Greetings and welcome to TMH English News. I'm Deletna Dewalko. Ethiopia air raid on Maqala yesterday kills at least 10 civilians, amongst them children. German newspaper Der Spiegel says the world is mistaken about Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. A new VOA documentary portrays the plight of Tigrayan refugees in Sudan. The Tigray armed forces have started to take over the town of Desse. They have started to take control of Desse town after destroying several of the enemy's army divisions in a speedy and spectacular operation. Central Command of Tigray Armed Forces said its forces are doing their best to rout the enemy outside the town. However, the defeated army is firing artillery from within the town, and the command said that the Tigray Armed Forces are taking precautionary actions and measures to avoid risks to public safety. Meanwhile, they have continued their advance via a different route, as Tigray TV reported, citing statement of the Central Command. Ethiopia air raid on the capital of Tigray regions yesterday kills at least 10 civilians, amongst them including children. The Ethiopian government claimed that the strike hit a factory in Maqala used by the Tigrayan forces. And Nahusanai Balai, a Tigray spokesperson, said the target of the air raid was a civilian residence, adding that 3 children were among the dead. The AMA from Tigray's Bureau of Health told Tigray TV at least 10 civilians are confirmed dead as a result of the airstrike yesterday morning, adding over 30 people have also been injured.
And more than 15 houses are damaged and destroyed. And it's expected that there are many people that are not collected from the destroyed houses. So the confirmed dead bodies that are admitted to either hospital and Maqala hospital are more than 10, and the injured are more than 30.
Talking about how the airstrikes have added additional burden on Tigray's already obliterated system, he had this to say.
Yeah, it's known that more than 80% of the health system in Tigray, probably the hospitals and health centers, are damaged and destroyed, and most of the health system, most of the health service delivery is so far is not functioning because the medicines and drugs and supplies are looted, and many health professionals are killed, and this ongoing airstrike will add burdens on the health system because we don't have any drugs to treat the patients and the injured people, and we don't have any vital drugs and supplies that are critical to the patients to salvage. So I think the regime is making the genocide project in all sides. The region is encircled 360. So this will be another burden that is added to our system.
The health officials say the children are now scared of any sound due to the trauma created by the aerial bombings. Earlier, member of Tigray Central Command, Getachew Reda, confirmed that the attack on Maqala and the Tigray air defense units were engaging in an enemy jet. Photos from the scene appeared to show rescuers pulling bodies from debris as well. Tigray television screened pictures of Red Cross workers at the site of the collapsed brick structures with corrugated iron roofs, as well as blankets and kettles can be seen among blood-stained wreckage. When asked by Reuters for a comment on the alleged civilian death, government spokesperson Legessa Tulu replied in a text message that there was no any intended and deliberate harm on their civilians and their properties. Quote, "The airstrike successfully hit its target," he claimed. Doctors say yesterday's air bombardment of Maqala is the worst of its kind since the airstrikes on the regional capital started earlier this week. Kabrom Gabraselassie, a special surgeon at the Ida Referral Hospital, said yesterday's airstrikes inflicted the highest number of casualties.
Abiy Ahmed administration has been bombarding Maqala for the last more than 1 week, and this is a continuation of what he has been doing for the last 1 year. They have been targeting us, they have been targeting with artillery shelling, air bombardment last year, just November. Now again, after the liberation of Tigray, after the forces have advanced deep into the central part of the country, he is targeting civilians in their house, in their residential areas.
He said the siege, coupled with the bombardments, have put a strain on the Ida Referral Hospital.
I've been under siege for the last 4 months. There is no banking system, there is no electricity, there is no telecommunication and the internet. And the people were starving. Children were dying due to starvation, severe malnutrition. And we were expecting the international community to help us to airdrop some food items and drugs. Rather than helping us, they are simply watching when the people is bombarded and being killed. The siege is also a continuation of the genocide because people are dying due to starvation and lack of medicine. Yesterday we have announced that there is no dialysis, there is nothing that we can dialyse a patient. So acute kidney injury patients as well as chronic patients that have been with us, we were following them for years on dialysis. They were waiting for transplant, now they are sentenced to die.
Tigray TV reported the aerial bombardments by the Ethiopian government have so far killed 14 civilians, including children, injuring dozens and destroying private property as well as public property. A new VOA documentary of Tigrayan refugees in Sudan portrays the plight of separated families, children escaping bombardments, and pregnant women in the wilderness. Yesterday, Voice of America released this documentary titled Terror in Tigray, the Ethiopian Refugee Crisis, the newest in a series of films examining forced displacement due to war conflicted around the globe. For the new film, VOA refugee correspondent Heather Murdoch visited the Rakub refugee camp in Sudan this year, where tens of thousands of people who fled Ethiopia's northern Tigray region sought refuge amid multiple reports of human rights abuses, atrocities, and serious food shortages. Murdoch also visited the Tigray province itself, where roads are often closed and communication with the rest of the country is extremely limited. Camp residents reported collecting dead bodies from the streets and seeing homes and businesses looted or destroyed. The 25-minute documentary features animations that illustrate the plight of separated families, young children escaping bombardments, pregnant women walking through forests and dodging wild animals to reach safety in this refugee camp. Executives with Amnesty International, an international non-governmental organization focused on the human rights, described the events in Tigray as possible crimes against humanity, while multiple human rights organizations warn of a deepening humanitarian crisis in northern Ethiopia. In addition to English, the film is released in 3 other languages spoken in Ethiopia and Eritrea: Afan Oromo, Amharic, as well as Tigrinya. Der Spiegel, the world is mistaken about Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed, he said. In an article published under the title The Chosen One, the widely read German newspaper said the man who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 is now leading a genocidal campaign against the part of his people. Who is this man and whom the world was so mistaken, and how much to blame is the Nobel Prize Committee? Looking for an answer, Der Spiegel spoke to companions, diplomats, former members of the government, and longtime observers and combed Abiy's speeches and appearances since he took office. The newspaper findings paint the picture of a ruling man who's increasingly resistant to advance, who believes in divination and is obsessed with power and thinks he's been chosen by God. According to Der Spiegel, Abiy Ahmed began to stir up hatred against the old leadership from Tigray shortly after taking office. Fear grew in many regions that Abiy would abolish the finely balanced federal system that guaranteed substantial autonomy to ethnically defined states like Tigray. In 2019, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for what the international community supposed were the reforms he initiated for rapprochement with Eritrea. Although the details of the peace treaty are still unknown, and the borders between the two countries were only open for a few months and still have been closed since. Critics accuse Abiy that the supposed reconciliation between Ethiopia and Eritrea was just a maneuver on both sides to defeat their common enemy, Tigray's regional government. The Ethiopian historian Wilbert Smith, who has worked with Ethiopian universities for more than a decade, laments the naivety of many Western politicians who value African leaders with simple narratives. Abiy rose above laws and institutions that struck a precarious balance between the many competing groups, he said. Regarding the Nobel Peace Prize as a carte blanche, Abiy remarked on a genocidal war that is still raging and has led tens of thousands of deaths and starved hundreds of thousands of displaced people as well. After the Nobel Award ceremony, Abiy and his government had the feeling that they were no longer accountable to anyone, says Saadallah Lema, editor-in-chief of Addis New Magazine, Addis Standard, and Mahari Tadelemaru, a professor of the European University Institute in Florence, said the Nobel Committee happens at least partially responsible for what is happening in Ethiopia currently. That wraps up our news for today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll have more for you next week. Have a great weekend.